that had watched Earth for 30 years. From their hidden stations beyond Neptune, they studied the small blue planet and the strange creatures that lived on it. Humans, they called themselves, short-lived beings who rarely survived 100 years. They fought wars against each other. They polluted their own world. They were divided into hundreds of nations that could not agree on anything. They found them amusing. Ambassador stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Divine Purpose, and looked at the images of Earth on her screen. She had 4 eyes, purple skin, and stood nearly 3 meters tall. Her species had ruled 40 star systems for 10,000 years. They had seen many primitive species before. Humans were nothing special. "Begin the approach," she ordered. "Standard diplomatic formation. Let them see us coming." Her tactical officer, Eth, nodded and gave the commands. 40 ships moved forward, their engines glowing with blue light. They made no attempt to hide. Why would they? The humans had only been traveling in space for 200 years. Their technology was crude. Their weapons were toys. The plan was simple. They would appear in orbit around Earth. The humans would be shocked and afraid. Then they would offer them a choice: join the collective peacefully or be integrated by force. Every species they had ever contacted had chosen the first option. Fear was a powerful tool. But as the fleet approached Earth, something unexpected happened. A message came through on every communication channel. The voice was calm, steady, and spoke perfect. Someone had learned their language. "Vessel, you have entered Terran Protectorate space. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. You have 60 seconds to comply." 4 eyes blinked in surprise. She turned to Eth. "They detected us." "Impossible," he replied, checking his instruments. "Our stealth technology is perfect. No primitive species has ever." "Apparently this one has," interrupted. She felt a small spark of interest. Perhaps humans were slightly more advanced than they had believed. It did not matter. They were still insects compared to the "Open a channel, tell them we come in peace." Before she could send the message, her sensors detected a small ship approaching. It was tiny, barely larger than a shuttle, and it flew directly toward the fleet without any sign of fear. "Should we destroy it?" Eth asked. "No, let us see what these humans want." The shuttle docked with the Divine Purpose without asking permission. Found this rude, but she was curious. She ordered her guards to bring the human to the bridge. The doors opened, and a young woman walked in. She was small, very small. She barely reached his chest. She had black hair, sharp eyes, and wore a simple gray uniform with a name tag that read. She looked around the bridge at the towering officers, the advanced technology, the weapons pointed at her. And she smiled. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "Welcome to our solar system. I am Lieutenant of the Terran Protectorate Navy. Admiral Park sends his regards and wishes to inform you that your fleet will be escorted to a designated meeting area." Stared at the tiny human. "Escorted? Child, we are the collective. We have conquered 40 worlds. We do not require escorts." "With respect, Ambassador, you are in our space now. Our rules apply." Smile did not waver. "The Admiral is very eager to meet you. He has been preparing for this moment for a long time." Eth stepped forward, his hand moving toward his weapon. "You dare to give orders to us? Your entire species could be destroyed in a day. Your planet could be turned to ash. You are nothing." Looked at him. Her smile faded, replaced by something cold and hard. "Sir, I would recommend looking out your portside viewport." Turned to the large window on the left side of the bridge. At first she saw nothing, just the darkness of space and the distant light of Earth's moon. But then the moon's shadow seemed to move. Something was emerging from behind it, something vast. They appeared slowly, like a monster rising from the deep ocean. It was enormous, 2 kilometers long from front to back. Its hull was dark gray, covered in armor plating that their sensors could not scan. Weapons lined every surface, massive cannons, missile tubes, energy arrays that glowed with strange light. The ship was not elegant like vessels. It was brutal, industrial, built for one purpose only. War. Felt her heart stop. She had commanded fleets. She had seen the greatest warships in the galaxy, nothing compared to this. What is that?" Eth whispered. "That is the TPS," Lieutenant said calmly. "Titan-class warship, flagship of the Terran Protectorate Navy. She carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon." She paused. "Admiral Park is aboard. He is waiting for your response." The bridge was silent. Every officer stared at the massive human vessel. Their instruments screamed warnings about weapon locks, shield frequencies, and power readings that should not be possible. His mind raced. This was wrong. Humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to bow and beg for mercy. They were not supposed to have ships like this. "How?" she demanded. "You have only had space travel for 2 centuries. How did you build such a thing?" Clasped her hands behind her back. Her expression was polite, but her eyes were ancient. "Ambassador, we have had space travel for about 240 years, but we have had war for 12,000. Every generation of our species has fought. Every nation has risen and fallen through blood. We have killed millions of our own kind in conflicts you cannot imagine." She gestured toward the. "When we learned that we were not alone in the universe, we did not panic. We did not pray for salvation. We did what humans have always done when faced with danger." "And what is that?" asked quietly. "We prepared." The ambassador looked at the young lieutenant, then at the impossible warship hanging in space, then at the small blue planet in the distance. For the first time in her long life, she felt something she had not felt in centuries. Uncertainty. "Very well," she said finally. "We will accept your escort." Lieutenant's smile returned. "Excellent. Please follow the designated flight path, and Ambassador." "Yes." "Welcome to Earth. We hope your visit will be educational." Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the and watched the fleet through his. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and a face marked by decades of service. He moved slowly, spoke quietly, and never raised his voice. Those who knew him understood that his calm manner hid a mind that never stopped calculating. "Status report," he said. Commander stood beside him, her tablet glowing with data. She was 42, tall and sharp-featured, with a reputation for being the strictest officer in the fleet. Sailors feared her inspections more than enemy weapons. 40 ships in formation, sir. All weapon systems appear to be armed. Their flagship is massive, nearly a kilometer long. It outguns anything we have except the herself." Park nodded slowly, and our guest. "Lieutenant is returning now. She reports that they have agreed to follow our escort." "Good, she did well." The Admiral watched as the small shuttle departed from the flagship. Was young, but she had iron in her spine. He had chosen her for this mission because she would not flinch, no matter what she faced. The bridge crew worked in silence around him. 200 officers and sailors operated the countless systems that kept the alive. Every one of them had trained for years. Every one of them knew what was at stake. On the fleet began to move. They followed the designated path toward Earth, with the behind them like a wolf following sheep. "Sir," said the communications officer, a young man named Shin, "the flagship is requesting direct communication. Ambassador wishes to speak with you." "Put her through." The main screen flickered, and the ambassador's face appeared. She was massive, purple-skinned, with 4 golden eyes that studied him with obvious curiosity. Park had seen images of before, but this was his first time speaking to one directly. "Admiral Park," she said. Her voice was deep and rich, translated perfectly by their systems. "I must admit you have surprised us. We did not expect such a welcome. We aim to be good hosts, Ambassador." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Your ship, though our sensors cannot penetrate its hull, Our computers cannot identify its power source. This should not be possible. And yet here we are. How did you build it? Your species is so young. 2 centuries of space travel is nothing. We have walked among the stars for 10,000 years. Park considered the question carefully. Behind him, Commander watched the tactical displays. The weapons were still armed, still locked onto the. If fighting started, it would be brutal. Ambassador, do you know how many wars humanity has fought in its history? Paused. We have studied your records. Thousands, I believe. More than that, we stopped counting long ago. Park stepped closer to the screen. Every war taught us something: how to build stronger walls, how to make sharper swords, how to organize armies, supply troops, break enemy morale. We learned through blood and pain, generation after generation. He gestured at the bridge around him. "The is not a miracle, Ambassador. It is the result of 12,000 years of warfare compressed into a single machine. Every nation on Earth contributed. Every lesson we ever learned went into her construction." Was silent for a long moment. "You built a warship of unprecedented power. For first contact, you expected violence." "We prepared for every possibility." Park's voice remained calm. "Your observation posts were not as hidden as you believed. We have known about them for 15 years. We have intercepted your communications. We know how you treat species that do not wish to join your collective." The ambassador's 4 eyes widened. "You intercepted our communications." "We are a curious species, Ambassador. When we see something new, we study it. When we find a potential threat, we prepare to face it." From behind Park, Commander spoke up. "Ambassador, our records show 17 instances of scout ships testing Earth's defenses over the past decade. Each time, they probed our sensor networks, our military installations, our weapon capabilities." His expression shifted. For the first time, she looked uncertain. "Standard observation protocols, nothing more." "Is that what you called it when you observed the?" asked coolly. "Before you sterilized them?" The bridge went silent. On the screen's face became very still. Park raised a hand slightly, stopping from continuing. "Ambassador, we are not your enemies. We have no desire for war, but we will not be observed, tested, and like animals. We will not beg for permission to exist." He turned back to the. "You came here expecting to find primitives. You found us instead. Now you have a choice. You can treat us as equals, speak with us honestly, and perhaps find a new ally. Or you can try to threaten us, in which case." He paused. "Well, the has never fired her main weapons in combat. I would prefer to keep it that way." Ambassador stared at him for a long moment. Her tactical officer, Eth, whispered something in her ear, probably warnings about the human ship's impossible power readings. Finally she spoke. "You are not what we expected, Admiral Park." "We rarely are, Ambassador." "Very well, we will proceed to your designated meeting area. But I warn you, the collective is vast. Our fleets number in the thousands. One ship, no matter how powerful, cannot stand against an empire." Park smiled slightly. It was a small expression, barely visible, but it made his eyes narrow with suspicion. "Ambassador, the is our flagship, but she is not our only ship. She is simply the one we chose to show you." The communication ended. His face vanished from the screen, replaced by the view of stars and the distant blue glow of Earth. Commander stepped closer to the Admiral. "Do you think she believed you about the other ships?" Park watched the fleet moving toward Earth. "She will believe what she wishes, but she will also report back to her superiors, and they will wonder, they will question, they will hesitate. And hesitation is good. Hesitation keeps everyone alive, Commander." He clasped his hands behind his back. "For now, that is enough. Now let us prepare for our guests. I have a feeling these negotiations will be interesting." They followed the fleet toward Earth, its massive engines burning with light that should not exist. In the silence of space, the 2 civilizations moved toward each other, each carrying the weight of their history. One was ancient, powerful and certain of its superiority. The other was young, by endless conflict and absolutely unwilling to kneel. The universe watched, and somewhere in the depths of the 40,000 sailors prepared for whatever came next, the diplomatic summit was held aboard Station, humanity's largest orbital platform. It floated above Earth like a crown of metal and light, home to 50,000 people from every nation. Ambassador had seen many space stations in her long life. This one was crude by standards, functional rather than beautiful. But it was also enormous busy, and filled with a strange energy that she could not quite understand. Humans moved everywhere. They walked, ran, laughed, and argued in the corridors. They spoke dozens of different languages. They wore different clothes, had different skin colors, different beliefs, and yet somehow they worked together. They built things together. They created this station together. It made no sense to. In her experience, divided species destroyed themselves. Unity required a single culture, a single purpose, a single authority. They had learned this lesson long ago. Differences were dangerous. Sameness was strength. But here were the humans, different in every way and somehow stronger for it. The meeting room was large and plain. A long table sat in the center, surrounded by chairs designed for both human and bodies. Admiral Park waited at one end, flanked by Commander and several other officers. But there were also civilians, politicians in formal clothes, scientists with curious eyes, and a quiet woman who sat with a tablet and stylus, writing constantly. "Ambassador," Admiral Park said as entered, "thank you for joining us. Please sit." Took her place across from him, her aide Eth standing behind her. She studied the humans carefully. They did not seem afraid. They did not seem impressed by her height or her status. They simply watched her with calm, measuring eyes. "Before we begin," Park said, "I would like to introduce our team. Commander, you have met. These are representatives from the Terran Protectorate Council, politicians who speak for our various nations. Doctor is our chief scientist for studies, and this is our chief historian." His eyes moved to the quiet woman with the tablet. A historian. Why would they bring a historian to diplomatic negotiations? Looked up from her writing and smiled politely. She was perhaps 50 years old, with gray-streaked hair and gentle features. She did not look threatening, but her eyes were sharp, and she watched the way a scholar watches a subject of study. "Ambassador," said, "I have been studying history for many years. Your archives are quite detailed. I hope you do not mind if I ask some questions during our discussions." "Questions about our history?" Was confused. "We are here to discuss the future, integration, trade, the benefits of joining the collective." "Of course," said, "but history shapes the future, does it not? I find that understanding the past helps us make better decisions about what comes next." Felt a small warning in her mind. Something about this woman made her uncomfortable, but she pushed the feeling aside. These were primitive beings. What could they possibly know? The negotiations began simply enough. The delegation explained the benefits of joining the collective: advanced technology, protection from hostile species, trade with 40 star systems. It was a generous offer, they said. Most species accepted immediately. "And those who do not accept?" Commander asked. "All species accept eventually," replied smoothly. "Once they understand the benefits, resistance becomes unnecessary." "But some do resist initially," the historian said, still writing on her tablet. "Though, for example, your records indicate they refused integration for nearly a century." His four eyes narrowed. They were a difficult case. They were aggressive, isolated, and refused all attempts at peaceful communication. "And so you sterilized them." The room went very quiet. Looked up from her tablet. Her expression was still polite, still gentle, but her words hung in the air like a blade. "Your records indicate that the population was reduced from 3 billion to 0 over a period of 60 years. They were stripped of resources. Their culture was erased. Their language is now extinct. She tilted her head slightly. You call this integration? Eth stepped forward, his scales darkening with anger. You accuse us of. I accuse you of nothing, said calmly. I am simply reading your own records. We have been intercepting communications for 15 years, Ambassador. We know exactly how your collective treats species that refuse to submit. Admiral Park leaned forward. Ambassador, we are not children. We have spent years preparing for this meeting. We know what the collective truly is. We know what happens to species that resist. We know the real meaning of integration. Felt something cold spreading through her chest. These humans, these primitive, short-lived creatures had been watching, learning, preparing. They were a threat, she said carefully. They attacked our ships, they killed our people, we defended ourselves. They defended themselves, Lieutenant said quietly. She had been standing near the door, silent until now. Your records show that forces entered space first. They came to offer integration. They refused, and then your forces returned with warships. Rose from her chair, towering over the humans. You know nothing of what happened. You were not there. You cannot judge us. We have been exactly where they were, Admiral Park said. He did not stand. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. Ambassador, human history is filled with integration. Empires that swallowed smaller nations. Cultures that were erased. Languages that died. Peoples who were reduced to nothing. He gestured at the people around the table. Everyone in this room carries the blood of both conquerors and conquered. We know what you are because we have been what you are. We have committed atrocities that would shame your collective. He paused and his voice became very soft. The difference, Ambassador, is that we learned. We changed. We looked at our history and decided to be better. Can you say the same? Stared at him. For a moment she could not speak. No species had ever spoken to her this way. No species had ever challenged the collective's actions. They accepted or they were removed. That was the natural order. But these humans, these tiny, fragile, impossibly brave humans, stood before her without fear. We are not your enemies, Admiral Park continued. We do not want war, but we will not be integrated. We will not kneel. And we will not stand by while others are destroyed in the name of unity. The historian closed her tablet and looked at with sad eyes. Ambassador, your collective has existed for 10,000 years. You have conquered 40 worlds. But in all that time, have you ever helped a species rise? Have you ever lifted others up instead of pushing them down? Have you ever offered true partnership? Wanted to answer. She wanted to defend her civilization, her history, her beliefs, but the words would not come. Because somewhere, deep in her four hearts, she knew the answer. And she was ashamed. After the painful meeting in the conference room, Ambassador made a request. She wanted to see She wanted to walk through its corridors, examine its systems, and understand how such a primitive species had built something so terrifying. Admiral Park considered the request carefully. Showing an enemy your weapons was dangerous, but he was not certain that there were enemies, not yet. And sometimes, the best way to prevent a war was to show your opponent exactly what they would face if they started one. Approved, he said, but you will be escorted at all times, and certain areas are restricted. Agreed. She did not expect the humans to reveal everything. She simply wanted to understand. The shuttle carried them from station to as they approached, pressed her face to the viewport like a child seeing something wonderful for the first time. Up close, the Titan-class warship was even more impressive. Its hull was covered in thick armor plates, each one bearing the marks of testing and improvement. Weapon systems lined every surface, some she recognized, many she did not. How long did it take to build? She asked. Lieutenant sat beside her, serving as guide. 40 years from first design to completion. 6 nations provided the main workforce. 12 million people contributed to the project. 12 million, Eth could not hide his amazement. for one ship. "The is not just a ship," replied. "It is a symbol. It represents everything humanity can do when we work together. Every bolt, every wire, every system was built by human hands. No shortcuts, no stolen technology, just us." The shuttle entered the main hangar bay, a massive space that could hold dozens of smaller vessels. Stepped out and looked around. Humans moved everywhere, technicians checking equipment, pilots preparing fighters, officers giving orders. The sound of machinery filled the air. The smell of metal and fuel surrounded her. A stocky man in a dirty uniform approached them. He had grease on his hands and a smile on his face. "Ambassador, welcome aboard. I am Chief Engineer No. I built this beautiful lady with my own 2 hands." He patted the nearest wall with obvious affection. "Well, me and 12 million other people, but I did the important parts." Studied him. In the collective, engineers were low-status workers. They were necessary but not respected. Yet this human spoke with confidence and pride. He looked at his work the way an artist looked at a masterpiece. "Your power source," she said. "Our sensors could not identify it. What is it?" Smile widened. "Quantum cascade reactor. Theoretically impossible according to standard physics. Took us 20 years just to figure out the math. Another 10 years to build a working prototype. Lost 3 stations to explosions before we got it right." "You lost stations, people died." "Many people died." Smile faded slightly. "Building was the most dangerous project in human history. We knew the risks. We accepted them, because some things are worth dying for." He led them through the corridors of the ship, noticed everything: the thickness of the walls, the placement of the doors, the way every space was designed for maximum efficiency. This was not a comfortable ship. It was a machine of war, built by people who understood exactly what war meant. But she also noticed something else, something unexpected. The crew. They came from everywhere. Different faces, different hair colors, different body types. She heard them speaking in different languages, saw them praying in small shrines dedicated to different gods, watched them arguing about philosophy and science and art in the corridors. "You are not unified," she said suddenly. Admiral Park walked beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. "What do you mean?" "Your species. You are different from each other. Different cultures, different beliefs, different histories. Our intelligence reports indicated constant conflict between your nations. Disagreements, tensions, old hatreds that never healed." "All true," Park admitted. "Then how did you build this?" Gestured at the ship around her. "How did you work together? The collective requires unity, one culture, one purpose, one authority. Differences create weakness. Sameness creates strength. This is basic truth." Park was quiet for a moment. They walked past a large viewport that showed Earth in the distance, blue and green and covered in white clouds. So small, so fragile, so beautiful. "Ambassador, do you know what happened when we first detected your observation posts?" "I assume you began building weapons." "Yes, but first we panicked." Park smiled slightly at the memory. "Every nation on Earth panicked. Some wanted to hide, some wanted to surrender, some wanted to attack immediately, even though we had no way to reach you. For 6 months we argued and fought and accomplished nothing." "What changed?" "A young lieutenant, a woman named Han, wrote a paper. It was simple, really. She pointed out that every species we had imagined in our stories, our films, our dreams had one thing in common. They were united. One voice, one purpose, one fleet. And we were divided, scattered, weak." He turned to face directly. She asked a simple question. "What if we stopped fighting each other and started preparing together?" "And your species simply agreed." "No, we argued for another 2 years. But eventually enough people realized the truth. Our differences made us unique. Our conflicts had taught us hard lessons. But if we wanted to survive, we needed to find a way to work together without erasing who we were." Chief Engineer spoke up. that has crew members from 37 nations. We speak 100 languages. We follow dozens of religions. We argue constantly about everything." He grinned. "But when the alarms sound, every single person on this ship knows exactly what to do, because we built something together, not by becoming the same, but by respecting our differences and focusing on what matters." Was silent for a long time. They walked through more corridors, past more crew members, past more evidence of humanity's impossible unity through diversity. Finally, they reached the main bridge. It was smaller than she expected, functional rather than grand. Officers sat at stations around the room, monitoring systems, analyzing data, watching the stars. Through the main viewport, Earth glowed in the darkness. "Ambassador," Admiral Park said quietly, "the universe does not care about justice. It does not care about mercy. It does not care about right or wrong. If you want peace, you must be strong enough to defend it. If you want freedom, you must be willing to fight for it." He turned to her. "We did not build because we love war. We built it because we remember what happens to those who cannot defend themselves. We have been conquered. We have been enslaved. We have been erased." His voice hardened. "Never again." Looked at this small, gray-haired human. He was nothing compared to her, weaker, shorter-lived, more fragile in every way. And yet she felt something she had not felt in centuries. "Respect. You are more than we expected, Admiral Park." "We usually are, Ambassador." He gestured toward the viewport. "Now, shall we discuss what comes next?" The negotiations lasted 6 months. There were moments when everything nearly collapsed. The delegation demanded that humanity submit to collective authority. The human delegation refused. Eth threatened war. Commander responded by listing the exact locations of 47 military installations that humanity had secretly mapped. Both sides accused the other of bad faith. Both sides walked out of meetings. Both sides returned again and again because the alternative was unthinkable. Ambassador found herself spending more time with the humans. She attended their meals, walked through their stations, spoke with their scientists and soldiers and ordinary workers. She learned their history, the wars, the famines, the plagues, the empires that rose and fell. She learned about their art, their music, their endless capacity for both cruelty and kindness. And slowly, something changed inside her. The final meeting took place aboard station, in the same plain room where everything had begun. Admiral Park sat at one end of the table. Ambassador sat at the other. Between them lay a document, the result of 6 months of argument, compromise, and painful honesty. The Terran Accords. "Let us be clear," Park said, reading from the document. "Humanity will not join the collective. We will remain independent. We will govern ourselves. We will make our own decisions about our future." Eth started to object, but raised a hand to silence him. "In exchange," Park continued, "we offer partnership, trade agreements that benefit both sides, cultural exchange programs, scientific cooperation, mutual defense treaties." He looked up at the ambassador. "And one condition that is not negotiable." Stated. "No integration, no absorption, no sterilization of resistant species." Park's voice was hard as iron. "Any species under the protection of the Terran Accords will be treated as equals. If they refuse to join the collective, that refusal will be respected. If the collective threatens them, humanity will respond. You would go to war for species you have never met. We would go to war for the principle, Ambassador. We have fought for less." Looked at the document. It represented everything the collective had never accepted. Independence, diversity, the right to refuse. For 10,000 years they had believed that unity required submission, that order required control, that peace required power. But the humans believed something different. They believed that peace could exist between equals, that strength did not require conquest, that different species could work together without one dominating the others. It was a foolish belief, naive, dangerous, and yet found herself wanting it to be true. She thought of their empty world, of their silence, of the guilt she had never allowed herself to feel. She thought of Chief Engineer, who loved his ship more than his own life, of Lieutenant, who had walked onto a flagship without fear, of the historian, who asked questions that no one had dared to ask for centuries. She thought of Admiral Park, who had built a weapon of impossible power, not for conquest but for protection. "You are so young," she murmured. 2 centuries among the stars. We have 10,000 years of history. We have wisdom you cannot imagine. Commander stepped forward. "And in 10,000 years, how many species did you help rise? How many did you lift up instead of conquering?" Had no answer. She reached for the stylus. Her hand trembled slightly, the first time it had trembled in 500 years. She signed the accords. The room was silent. Then slowly Admiral Park rose from his chair. He walked around the table, stopping in front of the ambassador. He was so small, so fragile, so impossibly brave. He extended his hand, stared at it. In culture, physical contact between species was rare and meaningful. It implied trust, respect, partnership. She took his hand. "Welcome to the future, Ambassador," Park said quietly. "Let us build something new together." Years later, would write a report for the High Council. It was never officially published, but copies spread through diplomatic channels across the galaxy. "We underestimated humanity. We saw their short lives, their internal conflicts, their primitive technology, and we assumed they were prey. We did not understand. Everything humans build, they build because they expect it to be attacked. Every alliance they form because they remember betrayal. They are not naive. They are not weak. They have simply made a choice that we never considered, to be better than their history while never forgetting what it taught them. The Titan-class warship is not their greatest weapon. Hope is. They genuinely believe the galaxy can be better, and they have built the power to make it so. Recommend, do not provoke, do not test, cooperate or stay far away." In the academy on station, a new class of cadets gathered for their first lecture. Admiral Park stood before them, his hair now white with age, his uniform heavy with medals he never wore. "You are the next generation," he said. "The galaxy is watching. Some hope we will fail. Some hope we will become what we fought against. Your job is to prove them wrong." He paused, looking at the young faces before him. So many dreams, so many possibilities, so much potential for both good and evil. "Remember who you are," he continued. "Remember what we came from. The blood, the pain, the endless wars that should have destroyed us. Remember the lessons we learned. And then go out there and show the universe what humanity truly is." In the back row, Captain, now in her 30s, with gray beginning to touch her hair, watched the cadets absorb his words. She remembered the day she had walked onto the flagship, alone and unafraid. She remembered Ambassador's shock. She remembered the moment everything changed. She smiled. Outside the viewport, the stars burned eternal. The galaxy stretched infinite and mysterious, filled with dangers and wonders beyond imagination. Somewhere out there, the collective was changing, slowly, painfully, learning lessons that humanity had paid for in blood. And somewhere out there, other species were watching, waiting, wondering what these strange, short-lived, impossibly stubborn creatures would do next. Captain looked at the cadets, then at Admiral Park, then at the stars beyond. Humanity was just getting started.